Most people who want to break into cybersecurity are told to do projects to stand out. Now, as a hiring manager, I see hundreds of cybersecurity resumes every month, and a lot of them have projects. And if I'm honest, most of those projects aren't really helpful. And I understand why. When I was trying to break into cybersecurity, I just wanted to do everything. So I've set up a home lab, I bought old used servers, and I even had network switches, and I was practicing with different operating systems. And yes, it did help a little bit, but if I'm honest with myself, most of it was just me wasting my time. And that's because I didn't really have a structure or any type of guidance. I was looking at logs from firewalls and I was looking at logs from Linux operating systems, but the truth is most of it didn't make any sense to me because I didn't have context and I didn't know how things are supposed to look like in the real world. Therefore, in this video, I want to share with you 5 guided cybersecurity projects that will give you structure to build your skills progressively. However, I'm actually targeting particular skills that a lot of cybersecurity certifications, even the practical hands-on one, don't tend to cover them properly. Now, I'm not just gonna show you these projects. I'm actually going to teach you how to use a practical hands-on platform in a way that will enable you to extract practical projects and show you exactly how you can add them in your resume to stand out. This way, you have this skill that can transfer to any other platform or any other skill, which will enable you to build your own cybersecurity project portfolio without needing me. And there is a nice giveaway in this project, but more on that later. And starting with project number 1, IBM QRadar. Now, IBM QRadar is a SIEM tool, which is essentially a tool that collects logs from various sources. And as cybersecurity professionals, we use this tool to create detection use cases. So the skill that you're gonna learn here is how to be a detection engineer. This skill will translate directly into a SOC analyst job or a cybersecurity analyst job. And for those who are new to this field, a SOC analyst or a cyber analyst have 3 primary tasks, which is to detect, analyze, and respond to cyber attacks. Now, detection is a huge undervalued area of cybersecurity. Now, as I said earlier, I want to teach you how to use a platform. So the platform that I choose for this video is Letsdefend. I've partnered with them to produce this video, which allows me to give you more details of the actual training in the video, but it also gave me a chance to give you 55% discount on their annual plans using the code UnixGuy55 and 1 free giveaway voucher for 3 months for their VIP Plus membership. To win the giveaway, I'm gonna post it on my personal LinkedIn profile, and I'm gonna leave a link to that post as a pinned comment under this video, so please keep an eye out for that. And as most of you know, Letsdefend was acquired by Hack the Box, but if you purchase annual membership with Letsdefend, or if you already have an annual membership with Letsdefend, then you have nothing to worry about. You won't lose your annual membership with Letsdefend up until the last day of your subscription. Now, to build the skills, we're gonna use Letsdefend SIEM Engineer Career Pathway. Now, this is not a certification, it's a learning pathway, which we will use to build a portfolio of projects. Now, this is ideal for someone who already did something like CompTIA Security Plus, for example, or perhaps you did Letsdefend SOC Analyst Pathway. This can be a nice follow-up to it, where you can build skills that focuses on detecting cyber attacks, with the goal of giving you a skill that will make you stand out in an actual interview. Now, if we look at the pathway, the first 6 parts of this pathway actually teaches you what SIEM is, how we use it, but it also features IBM QRadar as a tool that you get to install and practice with. So in part 3 of this career pathway, you get step-by-step guidance on how to install it. Now, I highly recommend you try and install it on your laptop or on a virtual machine. You don't have to actually run it as a SIEM on your machine, just go through the installation at least once. This way, we can add it as a skill on your resume that you've installed the SIEM. Now, chances are 99% of the jobs will not need you to know how to install a SIEM, but more so how to use a SIEM. So if you join an organization, they probably already have their own SIEM, but they want you to know how to configure it, how to create detection use cases. Nonetheless, going through the installation phase at least once will give you more confidence. Now, after installing it, the next step in working with the SIEM would be to onboard logs into the SIEM. For example, let's say you work in an organization, they have their own SIEM. For that SIEM to be effective, it needs to have logs from important sources, such as the firewalls or your Active Directory and important servers. So a big task for the detection engineer or the SOC engineer or the SOC analyst is to make sure that there is accurate, up-to-date log sources coming into the SIEM. Now, in this example here, you actually get to onboard onboard some log sources into the SIEM. Again, extremely important task. So make sure you actually configure the task into IBM QRadar and don't just click next. And then in lesson 5 and 6, you actually get to create alerts, which we call them detection use cases. This is where you create a rule that says if you see this type of traffic, create an alert so the SOC analyst can respond to that alert. And also, the other skill here is to be able to search through the logs. For example, if you're a SOC analyst and you get a phishing attack and you're investigating that phishing attack, you need to know how to search for logs. For example, you get the IP address of where that phishing is coming from, so you search it through your SIEM to see if someone else clicked onto that link, or to see if there is any outbound traffic going from your organization to that IP address. So this is a skill and we do it on the SIEM. So here you get a chance to practice. Now, don't get too hung up on the actual tool. Your organization may not use IBM QRadar. However, once you learn one SIEM, all of them are fairly similar. Now, when it comes to the resume, first thing I want you to go and download this free cybersecurity resume template. Go to unixguy.com/free, download it, and there is a section called projects. Under projects, we want to have one bullet point that says that we have done this SIEM engineer career pathway. Now, the big mistake is to just say that you've done that without any details and expecting the hiring manager to go to the website and search for you. That doesn't happen, and therefore we're going to have a paragraph describing what you've learned in that pathway, but we're going to have a bullet point for each tool that you've learned. And the first bullet point will be for IBM QRadar. We're going to describe how you installed it, configured it, onboarded the logs, and even did some log search and investigation. Now, we're not going to stop here, but we will populate the rest of the bullet points as we go through the projects. And the second bullet point will be populated in part 2 of this video, which is the second project, Splunk. Now, Splunk up until 2 years ago was the most popular SIEM tool in the industry. So if you needed to work in a security operations center or a SOC analyst, knowing Splunk was really expected, and it was, and to an extent still is, a highly sought after skill. Now, Splunk is still dominant in the industry. However, we have other good players as well, most notably Microsoft Sentinel, which is a really good competitor. And there are other tools as well. But as I explained earlier, once you learn one tool, all of them are fairly similar. Now, in the SIEM engineer career pathway, in part 7, it's all about Splunk. You have a total of 11 lessons covering Splunk, which will give you an opportunity to practice with another SIEM tool. It's the same concepts, but you're attacking it from a different angle. Now, this is crucial, especially if you're new to cybersecurity. It's really easy to forget the things that you've learned. However, when you practice with more than one tool and when you repeat the same concepts, this way you will have an easier time remembering things. Now, if you look at the lessons in Splunk, it's also similar. It shows you how to install Splunk, which again, I highly recommend that you do, but you also get a chance to practice with labs where Splunk is already installed. This is great, especially if your laptop is not powerful enough to run Splunk or you don't want to pay for cloud instances. I think it's a great idea to just practice with the instances that Letsdefend have created for you. But there is an additional part here that's just Splunk specific, which is creating reports, user management, but also configuring dashboards. Splunk has really popular pretty dashboards. If you ever had the chance to see what a security operations center looks in the inside, there are usually big screens with lots of nice visualizations of the numbers of attacks and the numbers of open tickets. Usually Splunk is a good tool to generate those type of dashboards. So here you get a chance to learn how to create dashboards. Now, it may seem silly, but this is actually a sought after task. So it's really cool to have it in your resume. And now, to go back to our resume, we will simply add a bullet point about what we've learned in Splunk. So we're going to say that we learned how to install it, but we also need to elaborate on specific keywords that are specific to Splunk. For example, Splunk Universal Forwarders, which is really cool to have in your resume, which means if the hiring manager uses Splunk and they see this type of keyword, they know that you've done work with Splunk. Now, compare that to another candidate who simply have a bullet point that says Splunk without any context. Here, I want you to be very specific about what you've done with Splunk. And of course, I want you to mention the custom reports and the dashboards that you've created. Now, trust me when I tell you this, I don't see many cybersecurity resumes that have this type of experience from entry-level candidates. Usually all I see is theoretical multiple choice stuff, or at best I'll see someone who says that they've had a home lab and they practice with Splunk. However, when I ask them what they've done with Splunk, it will always be something like, I've installed it, I've looked at it, but I haven't actually done much with it. That, in my opinion, is a waste of time, because installing a tool and looking at it is not really learning. I really want you to learn all the features and how to utilize them, and also add all of that in your resume. And you can do the same thing if you were to learn incident response. You have to mention the tools that you've learned when you did that. Speaking of tools, the next one is a pretty cool tool. It's open source and you can practice with it as much as you like, which is project number 3, Waza. Now, Waza is an open source free tool that you can install and practice with yourself. However, as I mentioned earlier, I prefer that you have guidance, especially if you're new to this field. This way, you're not wasting time on installing a tool and just looking at it. Instead, you're actually doing tasks that mimic what we do in the real world. And here in part 5 of the SIEM Engineer Career Pathway, you also have 11 lessons that covers Waza. Now, if I'm honest with you, I actually haven't seen many organizations use Waza, but I still think it's a good idea to practice with it a little bit. And here in the 11 lessons, you actually get to install it, configure it, and onboard some logs onto the SIEM tool. Now, this might start to feel repetitive for you or familiar, but trust me, once you finish this pathway, you'll be surprised how much you've learned. If you've done something like Comte Security Plus or the Google Cybersecurity Cert, now when you finish them, it's really natural to feel that you forgot everything, because you probably did. But here we actually get to repeat things and use it in completely different tools. Not only that, but on the interview or even on the job, if you see a completely new tool that you haven't used before, you will actually have the confidence, because you will know how to think about the tool. You're a cybersecurity professional, you know why we use a SIEM. You know what things we need for the SIEM to operate effectively. Even as a GRC professional, I don't need to have hands-on skills on every SIEM tool. However, I know what questions to ask. I ask about coverage, what logs have been onboarded, when was the last time you reviewed it. Give me access to the tool so I can see and verify that you have the right logs. So that type of skill only comes from practice, and here you get a chance to do a lot of practice. Now, in the last lesson of the Waza module, you actually get some pretty cool sample attack scenarios, which means you'll practice to see what real attacks look like on a SIEM. This is really cool because you get to also add that into your resume. So going back to our resume, we will simply add another bullet point for Waza, and we will say that we've deployed, configured the tool, created detection use cases, but I also want you to add that you've investigated common cyber attack scenarios. Now, project number 4 is actually a little bit controversial, because some people think that project number 4 is stealing cybersecurity job, and spoiler alert, it's not. Now, we're gonna cover all of that in part 4 of this video, which is SOAR, or SOAR. Now, believe it or not, SOAR is actually not a new concept. It had nothing to do with AI, and we've been using it for years. SOAR stands for Security Orchestrations, Automation, and Response. SOAR is a concept to essentially automatically detect and respond to a cyber attacks. It's great in theory, however, in practice, there are so many limitations. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're in a bank, and there's an application with database, and that database processes credit card information. Now, if the SIEM detects malicious traffic flowing into that application using SOAR, it should automatically respond to this alert and potentially bring down the application. Now, this could be catastrophic because it could be a false alert, and therefore in practice we don't really automate everything. Certain things can be automated, but this doesn't mean that SOAR is stealing cybersecurity jobs. Now, as someone who's trying to break into cybersecurity, or perhaps you work in a security operations center and you want to progress, learning automation is a really useful skill. It will give you a competitive edge, but if you're a SOC analyst, when you automate things, you'll have more time to learn, more time to improve the tools, and more time to perhaps progress into doing better and bigger things. Now, the lessons in Letsdefend use an open source tool called the Hive, which you can practice with. And like I said, in the real world, you may not use this particular tool, but once you've learned one tool, all of them work in pretty much the same way. And going back to our resume, we will simply add another bullet point under the Letsdefend paragraph that will describe what we've learned in the SOAR section. So we want to say that we've gained foundational understanding in the process of security orchestration, automation, and response. We've also used the open source tool Hive to manage and automate incident response workflow. Now, believe it or not, this small line actually have so many keywords that HR and automated systems and hiring managers are actually searching for. This is how you get a competitive edge when you're trying to land your first cybersecurity job. Now, once you finish the SIEM engineer career pathway and perhaps you've done the SOC analyst pathway in Letsdefend, or maybe you finished CompTIA Security Plus, project number 5 is where I want you to put everything you've learned into practice, which means I want you to work in an actual security operations center, which is project number 5, SOC monitoring. In Letsdefend platform, if you click on practice, you will get access to a simulated security operations center. You'll get a list of tickets that you can click on and investigate. This is really cool because some of the tickets are easy, some are medium, some are hard, which will give you a chance to practice with things that you've already learned. Now, naturally, you may not be able to solve all of those cases, which means if you notice that you have some weakness in some area, you can go and tackle that area. For example, if you just finished the SIEM engineer pathway, you'll be really good at detecting cyber incidents, or you'll be really good at searching through the logs. However, you may have weaknesses in incident response or threat hunting. The Letsdefend platform actually have pathways that cover all of these topics. So my recommendation for you would be to spend 3 to even 6 months on this security operations center. Try to solve all the cases, see what happens. Dedicate at least 2 to 3 hours every day to just practicing with this SOC. And I promise you, the knowledge and the confidence that you will have will naturally enable you to apply to more cybersecurity jobs, be in more interviews, and ultimately land your first cybersecurity job. This is how the hundreds of people who follow advice in my video actually land their first cybersecurity job. They spend their time doing practical hands-on labs. Now, what I really like about the Letsdefend SOC is that it really mimics the real world. You get to search through logs, but there is also case management, which means you get to follow a process similar to what we follow in the real world. You get a case assigned to you, then you start investigating this use case. You also get to search through endpoint logs and email security logs, and you can even do some threat intelligence and practice with things in a sandbox. This is as close as I've ever seen to a real security operations center. I wish I had access to these tools when I was starting out, because it would have given me a lot more confidence and I would have done so much better in interviews. Now, when I interview candidates in the real world, as soon as I start asking questions that are scenario based, most of them don't know how to answer because they've just memorized concepts. For example, they have the keyword phishing in their resume, and when I ask them how you'd investigate a phishing attack, a lot of the candidates will give me a high level answer on how they're going to conduct the search, but as soon as I start to ask some deep questions, most of them don't know how to answer. So this will be your competitive edge. Now, if we go back to the resume, we will have a new bullet points describing the work that we've did in this simulated security operations center. This bullet point will be its own paragraph, and in that I want you to specify the time you've spent in this simulated SOC. For example, you can say that you've spent 3 months practicing with this SOC. So the way I would word it, I'd say live SOC monitoring from Letsdefend. You can type the dates, for example, from March 2025 to June 2025, and I want you to say that you've monitored real-time security alerts, you've done detection, you've done analysis and respond to cyber attacks. Full stop. Then I want you to describe the incidents that you've worked on, and that will be different from each individual. For example, if you've worked on malware, I want you to say that you've investigated malware or you've investigated email security issues. Now, you don't need to describe every single incident that you've worked in, but you could say something like investigated cyber attacks including phishing, malware analysis, and email security. Or you could say performed threat hunting and threat intelligence activities using, and you add the name of the tools. So these are different ways of describing the same thing. Now, this is really important because those are the keywords in the job description. Beginners have a bad habit of just looking at the certification requirement. They'll see CompTIA Security Plus and they'll assume this is the only keyword in the job description. However, SOC analyst job descriptions contain so many keywords. They usually have the names of the tools and the names of the attacks. So the more keywords you meet from that job description, the better your chance at landing an interview. And if you've actually done the hands-on work here, you will have no problem demonstrating your skill in the interview. Now, a common question I get asked is, do I need to put this in GitHub? My answer is, I personally don't think so. In my opinion, GitHub is more appropriate for programming projects. However, if you really want to do it, please go ahead and do it. I personally don't do it, and I don't think it's really important, but some people like to do it. So if it's something you're really interested in, go ahead and do it. The way I prefer you showcase your skills and your projects is in your resume. We have a section called Practical Projects specifically for that, and it gives you a chance to include all the keywords that we search for. Now, if you've done all this hard work and you're applying to jobs, but maybe you're not getting the interviews that you think you should be getting, then maybe there is a chance that there are some mistakes in your resume. Now, I covered the most common beginner cybersecurity mistakes in this video, so please make sure that you watch it carefully, because I don't want you to do all this hard work and miss out on a job because you missed something on the resume. Check it out and I'll see you there.